Hello and welcome to another video with McCleaf. We are here today with Kurt Moyer and we will be discussing his new show entitled Impressions here at the gallery. It is open through October 7th. I don't know if the video will be posted before the show is over, but you can always see really nice images on our website of past shows, and hopefully you'll get in here and see it in person before it closes. So we're just going to take you a quick walk through so you can see every work in the exhibition, and briefly I will tell you a little bit about Kurt. Kurt is from southeastern Pennsylvania, in the area, the Philadelphia metropolitan area. He went to Kutztown University a while back, and he's just been practicing full-time artist since then, making work, doing residencies, going out into the woods to paint, making larger and larger scale paintings, as you can see. He does a little bit of teaching, and he's been represented by McCleaf for 15 years-ish. This is his 6th solo exhibition with the gallery, and we've already had some conversations with him too. We had a conversation at the PMA that is on our YouTube channel and also linked on Instagram. And here we are having this and we had one last February 2022. So this is our 3rd filmed
keeping it going
conversation. So here we are.
Thank you.
Yes,
thank
welcome.
you very much.
Yeah. So we've been through a lot of what we're going to start out with before, but for those who have not seen those previous conversations, tell us a little bit about what we're actually looking at here. Like, what are these paintings made of, and just any introductory material you'd like to...
So for the most part, these paintings are direct responses to experiences that I've had in nature. Usually very simple. The painting behind us is just called Spring, and I made this painting, literally hung it on the back of my shed and started working with the spring colors that were around. And you know, for many years I've painted a very traditional landscape, and I've been looking for and searching for a way to make something more independent out of that experience. It's something that wasn't always referencing the picture of what I was seeing, but maybe more in response to the way that it felt to be in that experience in nature or whatever the experience happened to be. So the thing that has been consistent throughout every painting I've ever made is the attention to color, you know, and copying color that I see and kind of internalizing that color so that I can, you know, remix and remember and keep that connection between myself and the experience, and you know, hopefully make something new out of it.
Yeah. So you do a combination right now of painting on location, right?
Right.
And then also bringing those paintings that you've done on location, and then also like memory back,
right,
like you're
right.
working sometimes from
memory.
memory.
I will work both on site and also in the studio. I really value that plein air painting experience because of the direct connection and because of the kind of surprising color that you see, the things. There's so much information that feeds into the painting that way that feels limitless. You know, feels like there's this bottomless benefit to working from nature, but I think the second best way to approach it is through memory. And so I start a lot of the paintings in the studio, where I start my session, I should say, on these paintings in the studio by working up different color relationships on my palette that are all based on that memory, and the way that they interact with each other is kind of inspired by the light that I'm recalling, and then there's the challenge of making this thing out of it. You know, that I sometimes put too much emphasis on that, like mixing color from nature business, because that's just the consistency. The challenge is how to produce something of value from that experience.
Right. When you're mixing the color, are you, like you said, color relationships on the palette? So I was wondering then if it's like, do you have your yellows and your greens and your blues, or are you literally being like, okay, these three colors like form this sort of triad that feels like this certain kind of experience?
It's more about when I say color relationships, I mean more the way they interact with each other. So I'm not really thinking a lot about, color theory and formal issues like that. I'm more, when they're on my palette, I can see when they're working together, and I can see when something doesn't belong.
Right. So you're literally putting them like side by side.
Piles of paint, and then as soon as I'm applying them to the canvas, there's this new relationship, and I really kind of approach that painting process in just a way of like feeling my way through it. When I place this spot, does it feel right? Does it feel wrong? Is it, where is it sort of sitting in space? How is it interacting with the colors around it? Is it too big? Is it too small? Is it too bright? Is it not bright enough? Is it, just have, what is its kind of, how vibrant is it? All those things are sort of gut reactions to the way it feels when I put it on the canvas. And it's all hopefully it's creating something new and something that is evocative of some sort of experience. For me, the paintings are about something that I'm specifically recalling, but I'm fully aware that other people coming in here are going to have those same experiences, so they're going to be approaching the painting in a different way, and that's 100% great. I just want to provide something for them, that they can, get some joy out of.
Right. So you're actively trying to hold a specific memory in your mind.
That's what I'm doing for myself. One of the things that I feel like I need to keep that relationship between the experience and the experience and the artwork that was sort of inspired by that experience. I don't think, at least right now, I'm not really interested in making work that's just about itself. You know what I mean by that? So I think for me, I still want that connection to a very specific outside.
Right. I guess I'm curious, like how, because as you know, like, there's different levels of like focus and like intentionality that you can have when you're doing something in general. It doesn't even have to be painting. Like you can mindlessly eat or mindlessly type, or
I think that there's I am one of those painters who doesn't know where things are going, who doesn't have a lot of that I'm not trying to control the outcome of these things. I need to have certain touchstones for me to keep the painting feeling very authentic, but then where it goes from there is sort of out of my control, and so as I'm placing these spots of color, things things are happening, like kind of illusionistic spaces are being created, and I'm responding to that. Because ultimately what I would like to do is make something that is autonomous, something that is not dependent on a reference to a particular place or something. You can like, I would like to be able to make a painting out of, for instance, I'll use an example of like going to see a waterfall or something, right? You could paint a picture, you could mimic the way that your perception of that waterfall, and you could make something kind of really very realistic, and every person coming to see the painting is going to kind of have a shared experience of looking at a waterfall. Or the beauty of abstraction is that you can make something that just uses that experience to make something new, and maybe the kind of waterfall is not going to come out for everybody, but that hopefully the artist has used the experience to kind of embody this new object, and give it some interest and power and something, some emotion that gets transferred for people who are viewing. Kind of jump ahead too much.
Let's go over it. No. We'll get to it all. So we'll talk as long as necessary. But I wanted to come over here and talk about this one a little bit.
Yeah. So this painting is way more, within the structure of a traditional landscape, and while I'm working, this was made on site. While I'm working, I'm very aware of the form of the thing that I'm painting. One of the things that I realize is if I'm standing in the meadow here and I'm just mixing these colors, I'm getting something very valuable, right? And I could place them in a grid. I could do, there's this sort of endless kind of options of what to do with those. And so the question really becomes, what form is this going to take? In this case, I've really allowed it to stay in the form of the landscape. So the shape of the trees really dictate where the things are. Like, I think that at a very basic level, that's what provides the structure that makes the colors make sense, right? But I actually feel like there's only that you can get away with much less structure of nature and still have the colors make sense, because I think what matters is that they're in relationship to each other so that they still depict light. If you took all the colors that you're kind of mixing from nature and applied them randomly, they lose a lot of their meaning. Whereas if you have a color that's in proximity to its shadow color, then both the shadow color and the light color have new meaning, right, or have retained their meaning.
Right.
And so I think there is a certain level of structure in nature that's important. So, like this piece has, you can see that some of these greens are essentially, you could almost imagine it as the same leaf being in the light or in the shadow, or maybe the underside of the leaf, or maybe the top part of the leaf. And so you can get this full range of greens out of that same local color, that same one leaf color in all of these different positions provide this, hundreds of different shades. I'm interested in those colors for A, because I think they're very beautiful, and B, because I can create space with them, and I can keep my connection to the experience, and maybe I can make some new object out of it. Right. And so that's those are the things that drive those are that drive these paintings.
It's funny to me because sometimes when I'm like listening to you describe, you know, these various aspects of your formal approach, like there's like the dots and then the dots in relationship to each other with their color and their space, which create these other larger forms and this larger structure in the work. And it almost feels like you're like reinventing making landscape painting, like because like ultimately, and I don't mean this in a bad way, because I think that it is like a productive zone for your like investigation, but like I think that sometimes they are more representational than they should be, given your process.
Well, so
you know?
yeah, I think that's something where that's something that I feel like I am kind of happily struggling with, right? Where if I let those color spots come together in such a way that an image is produced, that the image takes over. Right? Because one of the things that we like to do, like humans like to look at paintings and sort of solve the problem. Like see like, oh, I see it now. It's a blank. You know, it's a landscape. It's a still life. There's a person in there or there whatever, and they can figure that stuff out. Our brains love to do that, right? So we're always trying to sort of solve these puzzles.
Right.
If I tip it just over the other side, where you really can't kind of make out lots of things, then the color gets to start working a little bit more independently.
Right.
You know, and so you get to experience the painting in a more pure kind of abstract relationship sort of way.
Right.
And I think that there's probably like a happy spot, you know what I mean? And I think it's a difficult thing. It's a difficult thing for me to put my finger on, because, like I said, the color can't be random. You know, there has to be they have to interact with each other in such a way that produces light, or they're not kind of fulfilling what I would like to see happening.
Yeah, no,
you know?
you have like these requirements from both angles, like the observed representational angle, and then like the formal, like, you know, non-reference, like shape making and, you know.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So it's,
and I mean, that's maybe something that I'm not so much trying to like figure it out, right? I'm not like trying to like solve the problem and then all my paintings are gonna fit this format or something. It's a wonderful place to be, in that like painting from like a point of sort of unknown and uncertainty and hopefulness, that like it's sort of the belief that something through this process, something kind of magical could happen. You know, I mean, I think a lot of painters approach canvas with this sort of like, almost like a faith in the artwork's ability to like take over, you know, or to like surprise them. Right. And I think that there are times, like when I'm working particularly on a larger painting, where I'm making very small decisions about, like, does this feel right or does that feel right, as I'm placing these things, and then I'll step back and be actually really surprised by what's happening, by this thing that I'm making that I really am not seeing as I'm going, you know. And so it really is this sort of back and forth. Right. And it can work the other way too. You know, you can feel like everything's wonderful and step back and be like,
right,
you know?
right.
So
Yeah, I feel like in some ways, and I don't know if you consider yourself this way, but it feels like you're a little bit of a purist on a lot of like levels, like that.
yeah, that's okay. Yeah.
Okay, all right. Yeah, no, you know, whatever. I don't know if that could be taken negatively, but sometimes I'm careful about the way that I put things out there. But like, I think that, you know, when I was writing the text for your show, like I was putting some things out there that I don't know if you'd necessarily say or even think about during your process, because it seems to me that you've created this sort of framework of the process. Like, you work the painting from here, you look at the painting from here, you have the colors that you pre-mix.
I think what happens is that I'm not thinking about any of this stuff when I'm working so much, and then when it comes to time to show it and talk about it, you need to sort of be able to articulate what you're doing, and you wind up saying something that maybe you're sort of trying to make sense out of something that's not really, doesn't make any sense. And so I think artists, this is one reason why I personally don't like writing about my work, because I always feel like no matter what I say, it's a little wrong, or I've sort of pigeonholed myself, or something like that. So I love when other people write about my work, even if they're coming up with something that I never would have said. It's still so valid because it's their response to it. You know, the thing that I think about a lot are painters like Cézanne or Monet, or people who kept going back to the same source, and you could almost say they were trying to make the same painting, or some variation on that same painting. And I feel very much like I'm in that spirit of like, I have not yet made the painting of a forest that I really want to make, and so I feel like I could restart that forest painting over and over again for the rest of my life and feel like, you know, I was not limiting myself in any way, you know, because it's almost like I know I'm never going to make it, but it's this wonderful challenge, you know, and it's not even a challenge. It's not like that. This is what I mean. I always say a little bit of the wrong thing, because it's a good place to be. Let's just put it that way. It allows me to sort of experience and to filter all of my kind of life experience into painting, and it changes with me, and each painting is very different, and is, you know, I can say, oh, this is about this experience, or this is about that experience, but you know, it's kind of all the same. You know what I mean? It's all part of it's my daily life. You know. I'm getting off track.
No.
Or maybe on track.
No, this is good. I keep looking past you because this was right behind your head. Think, you know, as like a painter myself, like looking at areas that maybe you covered a spot with another spot. Yeah, you made a decision.
Well, every time I paint, I'm trying to do it right. That's so silly to say, but I mean, with every mark on the canvas, I think this is what that spot. This is what this place needs. I'm hopeful that everything will sort of come together, you know, and so when I walk into the studio, usually there's a painting up on the wall that you know, maybe I've been sort of stuck with or stuck on, that now I can see a path forward for it. And usually it's as simple as like, there's a color that doesn't belong. That is, and that was probably the case with something like this, where it's like that was probably too intense of a green and needed to be toned down,
right?
Or there wasn't enough kind of liveliness in that spot, or something was was kind of calling to me that I could see how to fix it.
Right.
And then that's kind of my way into the painting.
Right.
And on a really good painting day, you know, I'll paint like the whole thing. You know, I'll at least be adjusting the whole painting.
So I assume that was a spatial decision, or is it like all instinctual? Like, well, it's not about the disruption of the. I mean, it is.
Yeah, it's related. Yeah. Everything's related.
Right.
So it could be a color that just doesn't make sense in context of the experience, right? Or it could be a color that's not reacting with the ones around it where I want it to. So for many years, I made there's, like I said, these very kind of traditional landscape paintings where all of the colors sat in their particular level of space, right? And one of the things about painting in these forests is that, and painting with this new kind of more abstract spot situation is that now some of these spots can be really detached. And I think the paintings are at their best when the spots do feel detached from the spots around them. So if there's a place where there feels like maybe there's air behind some of these color spots, like something that feels like you could sort of reach in behind it.
Right.
I think there's something that's happening in the abstract language of the painting there that's important to me, and it's like I'm balancing, I think, all of these opportunities, I should say. So if everything is about this sort of bright poppy, pow, 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 it's too much. It has to be some sort of quiet areas too, where things are not. So if they're detached, they're maybe detached a little bit, you know, and
Yeah, no, it's almost like, I mean, you are getting different kinds of space and depth, like the space around the individual mark, but then, also as you back up, there is like larger indications of space in shape,
right.
in form. And I do think that, all of that, again, has to do with what you were just describing. Like some areas of the painting have a more closely related, like analogous palette. Like I was starting to point out just down here, you're in the same value range,
right.
Like everything is closer together than when you look over here where you have lots of different colors.
And there's a strong relationship between light and shadow in that case, which is again right on that cusp between, like, if you're making light and shadow, you're making representational work. And so these are I mean, I think representational is a kind of is a sort of a misnomer. These are representational paintings, because they represent something that's kind of happening out there in the world. So I'm using the way the light affects colors to kind of group them and make space in the paintings. Because often when something appears to be sort of standing off of the background, it's because there's a contrast there, right? I mean, it's like they're lighter or darker or brighter or duller than the things that are around them, and that is like just this very kind of academic way to create space.
Yep. Painting 101 is
it's painting 101,
what we're
right,
discussing right now.
Yeah.
But it never goes away.
No,
these are the issues.
Right. They're like the laws of physics, right?
Right. These are really beautiful.
Thank you.
And you're okay with that word?
I'm fine with that. Yeah.
You want them
Here's
to be. It's a goal.
Here's the thing. So I'm totally fine with that. I would love to make beautiful paintings that were essentially, meaningless. That their meaning is that they would bring someone joy. So a few years ago, somebody simplified this for me, and I hope I can describe it correctly. And I think I've tried before, where somebody said, great painting is a gift. you know, to us. So like if you go and I had this experience of sitting at, I forget, maybe at the MoMA, in the room where one of Monet's big water lilies are. And you watch all these people come in, and they're like, some of them are probably painters, some of them are just like, you know, random Joes, and like everyone is getting like a gift of the gift from that painting, and they've been getting that gift from this painting for now, what, 120 some years. And so it's like that is, you know, that gives, you know, like meaning to, purpose, I guess, to art making, you know. And so, and I think those Monet water lily paintings are a good sort of analogy for what I'm trying to do, because they weren't so much like a picture of his pond as they were a painting reaction to his pond. You know, they were above and beyond the kind of physical thing that was there. He just used it, this thing and this experience, to make this other thing and this other experience. You know, and so that's very much what I'm trying to do.
Are you leery of Monet at all? Do you feel like that, like his allure is so seductive that you may fall over the deep end and start painting water lilies and Bernie or something?
You know, there's, you know, I'm not leery of anybody. I mean, I think that there's a lot to learn from just about any artist out there. Like it's just, I think all of the painters, you know, that I really admire, you know, they've had to solve the same sort of problems that we all have to solve in our studios. And so if you look at the way that they've solved these problems, or the way that what they've created out of these same kind of roughly the same experiences that we have, you know, and it's just, you know, you feel, you know, grateful that they existed.
Right,
you know?
right.
Now, whatever they've become, like their sort of, you know, celebrity status is apart from the work.
Right,
you know what I mean? It doesn't really matter too much to me.
Well, thinking about, you haven't said it yet in this conversation, but we had a talk last night where you were talking about the architectural. I know that this is new to your work, so you haven't really sorted out how all of that means, but I bring it up right now because, like, I was struck by how much, like, I think there is an interplay between you and Monet, and I think that he ended up in this space of, like, you know, partially because the scale became so large that it's like, well, this is a wall, like it should be in the wall.
Right, and they built like the Orangery in Paris is very much constructed for those paintings, and the paintings constructed for the space. So one of the things that and I think you were just alluding to it, is that so the past year or two, I've been combining canvases, and partially that's just a really practical way to be able to make a bigger painting and be able to move things around. But it's also come about because this new kind of technique that I've been working with, I really don't mind the line in between anymore. It was always very disruptive, and now I feel like it's actually a plus for my work, and it's opened up some new possibilities of how the paintings can be exhibited in different spaces. So the piece over here, as I was working on it, it started with just 2 canvases, and then as I allowed it to grow, I could say more. I could make the painting more about an experience of sort of moving through a landscape, and literally, like, as I wanted to add other elements, I could add another canvas, you know, and so one of the things that I played with in the studio was how to exhibit these. I think they look great in different in different with different spaces in between them. The painting was very much made with them pressed up against each other. So they have this like kind of continuous, like the colors kind of jump from one canvas to the next, and so there's some options here. Mm-hmm. Not all the paintings work that way. So some of these other ones, they just can't be split. The painting sort of falls apart if you move the canvases apart. Mm-hmm. And so that's just, it's something that I've never, there's some new opportunities with the way the paintings could be exhibited that I've never gotten to deal with before. I'm trying to say it all in a very positive way because I tend to phrase things as problems, but I really think that they're not problems so much as they are opportunities.
Yeah.
And
right, new projects.
Yeah, exactly. So I could, for the first time ever, I started thinking about installations. About well, maybe instead of this just being one painting, maybe it's about installing a whole room or a whole series of rooms or something that had connected themes between the paintings.
Do you ever? So I keep thinking of passage of time, mm-hmm. or just sense of timing or speed even, but this is where my brain has been at for a couple of minutes, and I think you started to talk a little bit about this last night, that there's this one's called the meadow in the stream, and it is sort of early in the day, walking down the stream.
Well, and I took these canvases to the place, right? And so they were worked in the studio as well, but I kind of haul these things out there and mix. The left side of the painting is very much about this meadow, and then you move into this stream that's just sort of an endless fascination for me and source. And then I think it really could. You really could keep moving, and that's where the endlessness comes from. I'm working on a series in the studio of canvases in the studio right now, and they're all linked together. And just before I left to come down here, I separated them. There are 4 of them, and I separated them and put a much longer one in the middle. Mm-hmm. And it really did feel like I was making the experience of the middle of the painting just much broader. I was taking sort of an aspect of it and saying, I'm going to show you more of this.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Instead of squeezing that additional experience into the canvases that are there, I just kind of made room for it.
I do like drawing it back around again to even just how this has options to pacing. It's not even just a display, or we talked briefly about architecture of the space, but it's the speed of the viewing too, and how that maybe correlates with the speed of the experience.
Yeah, they become like frames. I mean, you could see them as frames in a film strip or something, but there's once you sort of split things up like that, there's this sort of passage of time that goes on, but it's just an interesting outcome.
Right.
I think when the painting gets big enough, that kind of happens too.
Right.
I was explaining to someone last night that this part of the painting is a very specific part of the creek walk, right? For me, and it's like someday I could take you to this place and say all right, for here we're in this part of the painting. This isn't a literal depiction of it, but the color comes from that kind of place in the creek. This place in the creek is for me represented by this part of the painting, and that over there is a very different part of. It's a very different place, and so. I think one of the things that has come out of this new way of painting is that I can include more than what is typically inside of the frame.
Right.
And there's that little painting over there that we started with is this very, very traditional landscape. There's a canvas upstairs of the apple tree and the meadow.
Right.
The middle part of that painting is from inside the apple tree. The sides of the painting are two very different meadows on either side. You would never be able to see that. It's a depiction of an experience of moving through a landscape.
Do you ever think of, so there's a lot of lines in these, like you're using spots, the spots come down, like they cascade down, but sometimes there's also these diagonal lines or these arc shapes. Like, do you ever think about those in terms of like the speed of the experience, or is it typically more like a shape and form?
I think about those all the time because oftentimes the sort of break in I think about these, when I'm in the studio, I refer to those as different color themes. It's just my way of kind of making sense of what I'm doing. So like in a painting like this one, you have this sort of violet color themes and these kind of green color themes, and when they kind of collide and interact with other ones, is where you get some of those space. You were talking about the form and the structure that appears in
right.
some
Well, maybe
right?
going over to this one is an easier example. That there's a sort of movement through the canvas, and we just replaced spring. It was pond before, and that one had like a spatial like tilt and reflection, but also these diagonals that could be seen as, again, you're talking about these experiences of moving through a space as like literally the pacing of that movement through the space. Like this is a different kind of pace than like a diagonal line with a moderate angle or one with an extreme angle, so.
I'm trying to allow both things to happen in the sense that like there's this sort of meaning and power and things that come out of the geometry of the landscape, and then there's this meaning and power that comes out of the geometry of abstraction, and I think the best paintings kind of have things I like about my paintings the best are when both those things are in there, and so there can be things. There can be specific spots that are ruled by the structure I'm thinking of, and then there can be specific spots that are ruled by just the formal decisions of how this is responding to the canvas, and so I'm trying to keep both those things valid. Do you know what I mean by that? And so I have worked with creating kind of more geometric structure to the canvases. When I think about what like Richard Diebenkorn did with the Ocean Park paintings, where he took the colors really directly from the landscape, but fit into these geometric patterns, right? And I'm very attracted to those paintings and very interested. And I think that I naturally, my kind of natural painting mark creates this sort of cascading dot thing. A lot of people come to the studio and they want to see the painting sideways or something, right? And it's like I kind of do it and it's fun, but then I put them back because when you turn them sideways, there's a strong horizontal thing going on, and that's really interesting. But I think that I'm making this kind of naturally cascading mark, and to some extent, I think, the best abstract painters like Diebenkorn or like Bryce Martin or like Joan Mitchell, they've created their own language that they're able to that language of their mark is rich enough that that they can sort of just work within that language, and I think that cascading mark has something to do with my language, you know.
Yeah, one more thing on like speed and pacing too that I like thought of is like actually this, you've kind of taken out like the speed of the mark on some level, I think, because it's like a dab of paint.
Yeah.
And then I started looking over here at like how you have this like kind of hatching area that has speed.
Well, the thing I like about the color spot is that it's not drawing a form. So one of the things I talked about last night is one of the goals, particularly with these larger paintings, is really to make a color spot that exists just as a color spot. It doesn't become like a Seurat kind of pointillist optical mixing exercise. The colors are big enough that they don't blend into the one next to it, but not so big that they become shapes. You know, once a color spot becomes a shape, then you're dealing with line, and you're drawing something. You know, and sure, that something could be abstract again, but and you could use line to, you know, delineate space as well. You think about, you know, you can map out the different levels in a million different ways. But right now, there's something. This kind of goes back to that, like, you know, I can make the same painting over and over again. I think it's a matter of seeing where this can go, you know, and seeing what's possible here, and only really allowing those other things to enter my work as they become necessary. You know, so I think that you know, anyone really could look at this and be like, well, what if you did, you know, this or that, or put a big X across all the, you know, and it's like, yeah, those are all like total possibilities, but for whatever reason, I haven't exhausted or resolved this particular thing I'm trying to do yet. And so I think you know, I tend to work a lot, and I tend to work on a lot of things at once, and it is always in that desire to do it right this time.
Right.
You know, and I think that's why I'm always able to start another painting and start another thing, because there's this, it's almost like gambling or something, and the addiction that you think that oh, this is it's just going to be like the right color, the right mark this time, you know. So I don't know. That's probably all.
These paintings are pretty.
Thank you. We'll just end there.
No. Do we need to end? Are you ready to end?
Get some lunch at some point.
All right, we took a brief water break for a moment, but I think we're getting kind of toward the end of what we intended to speak about. Did you have anything else that you wanted to?
I don't. I just want to say thank you, and that this experience is really good for me too, to have to articulate myself and explain what I'm doing, and helps me see my own work sometimes. Yeah. So thank you.
Yeah,
thank you, Bruce McCleaf. I appreciate it.
Yeah, and thank you, viewers. Leave us comments.
Thank you,
feedback.
Emma.
Thank you, Emma, the camera girl. All right.
Bye.
Yeah.
Thank you.